John, we're live from New York at the advertising upfronts for all the networks, and we have more NFL TV free agent frenzy. Drew Brees on the move. He and NBC are going to be done.
And Joe Buck, Troy Aikman, they spoke for the first time as ESPN employees, and Troy Aikman gave you a name check. How much did you pay for that?
I didn't pay him anything.
There has been a lot of movement, a lot of discussion, of course, over the last couple of years. It's turned into quite a business for Andrew Marchand.
And we're back. Welcome to the Marchand and Ourand Sports Media Podcast presented by U.S. Track and Field. He's John Ourand, the media reporter for the Sports Business Journal. I'm Andrew Marchand, sports media columnist for the New York Post. John, a lot of fun here in New York.
You know what, Andrew? I thought that was really cool. Aikman giving you the shout out, and he pronounced your name correctly.
He was pretty close. So a lot of people have trouble with the last name. It's always, Brad Marchand from the Boston Bruins. He was Marchand at one point. Now he's Marchand, so that actually lines up now. I think he changed it because a lot of people were doing that wrong.
Well, let's get into a busy week. Who's up? Who's down?
Who's up? Who's down?
My who's up? The McCourty twins from the New England Patriots. You say, wait, these guys are active players. Why are they your who's up? Well, Devin and Jason McCourty were at the NFL's boot camp out in Los Angeles recently, and from my sources, they excelled and look like future analysts. A lot of players who want to get into the media business, they go out to the NFL Network and they learn how to be on the air, how to be a studio guy, how to be in a booth, and they learn all these different skills. And the McCourtys were really excellent. And one interesting note: if you look at the TV landscape, all the Patriots, Willie McGinnis, Teddy Bruschi, some really successful analysts that came out of that Belichick system. And we talk about the big hire of Tom Brady. Just that attention to detail that the Patriots have, that really does translate maybe into the TV booth or the studio. Damian Woody as well as a former Patriot. And so watch out for the McCourtys when they retire.
Now, when you say you hear that they excelled, what does that mean? They were good on camera? They were able to talk? Like, what does that mean?
Well, I mean, there's skills involved here. Their ability to take what they know. Like, all these guys coming off the field, they know what's going on the field. Like, none of them who are excellent players don't know what to do on a football field. The difference is, how can that go from your brain to your mouth and say it in a short fashion? Like I'm not doing. And I can't play football either.
We need the boot camp. Take us to LA.
But that's the point. It's putting those skills and being able to translate that into a studio or into a booth. And so, some guys can, when you're on the field, you translate from your brain to your body and be able to make a play. This is being able to talk in 30-second sound bites, get in, get out. And from what I was told, the McCourtys were really good.
All right, so I'm going to go who's up. I have Peter Lazarus, Mark Evans, Rita Farrow, John Bogus, John Diamond. I'm up here in New York with you, Andrew. It's the upfront week. Those were the head sports sales executives for NBC, Fox, ABC, Disney, CBS, and Turner. And right now we're looking at a sports marketplace that is huge. It's going earlier than ever. There's more money that's coming into sports. And when people take a look at the NFL getting, $110 billion a year for, the NHL, we're going to have Gary Bettman on as a big guest later today. He saw a huge increase in his rights fee. This is why. This is what's selling to advertising executives in the television business.
And why is that? Why are we in a different stage where, that sports is so red hot? What's your opinion?
Andrew, you and I were both at the Fox Upfront yesterday. We're going to be at the Disney Upfront today. How many shows did you see that are not going to make it until 2023? Yep. The NHL, that it's going to be here until 2027 and then some. And generally what the rating is going to be. It's a very safe bet. Right now, with cord cutting, all of the entertainment viewers, they've all cut the cord and they went to Netflix and Apple TV Plus and Amazon Prime. Sports and news, anything live is what works, and people are falling over the sports marketplace. Mark Evans from Fox told me that for the NFL marketplace, they're going to see double-digit increases from last year, which is phenomenal in this market.
Mark Evans, the head of advertising for Fox Sports. It's a great place if you're an advertiser right now in this market. And Fox doubling down, really not doing the streaming thing. All right, I'm going to start with someone who does have, in terms of my who's down, someone who does have a streaming component, and that's HBO and HBO Max and Winning Time. And this has been an issue that we really haven't addressed here on the pod, is the Jerry West situation. I could not be any more on Jerry West's side in this situation. I don't understand how anybody thinks it's okay that you can use someone's actual name, who's an actual person, who actually has a profile or doesn't have a profile, and it's okay to say, well, we're going to sort of get it right. And we're going to say this is a dramatization, and then we're telling you this isn't totally true. How is that okay? Just ask yourself this if you're listening. If someone did that to you, and HBO had a show, and they used your name, and then they just took some of your personality traits and just made them so ridiculous. And I'm just, again, maybe they're accurate. They kind of admitted they're not. I think Jerry West has some of these qualities where I guess he's super intense behind the scenes. I never knew about this, but I'm not in LA, and obviously Jerry West is a little bit older after my time in terms of when he was in his prime as a player. But to me, I don't see, now I don't know if there's a suit there or not. I just think it's wrong. That's where I stand on that.
And Jerry West is the one that's getting the most publicity, but all of those caricatures are caricatures. Yep. I can't imagine that Kareem Abdul-Jabbar likes being portrayed as as aloof and angry as he appears to be on that series. Magic Johnson appeared to be this one-dimensional dope from East Lansing who just lucked into the Lakers.
Well, and here's the thing: if that's accurate, and some of those things like we've heard over the years about Kareem as a player and how he was and all those things, but either you're doing something you're using actual names. Like if you're gonna make it not true, then don't use their names. That's my problem with it. And so either you're doing an accurate portrayal and you use their names, or you try to be as accurate as possible and you use their names, or you don't. So that's my who's down. Who you got?
I will say this before we go into my who's down. I watched every episode and loved them, even if I thought that
I couldn't watch because of that reason. I just can't watch when it's like that.
My who's down. We have not spent enough time on this pod on Live Golf and that tour that they're getting ready to launch. And my who's down is Greg Norman, who stepped into it yet again. And he was talking about the Saudi regime. They murdered a journalist, and he called it a mistake. And this type of problem is creeping up every 2 or 3 weeks. It's obvious that they have a PR plan and they have a PR script, and these guys are not sticking to that script. And I just think about the people that are working for Live Golf. They thought that they were getting in there and trying to create a rival tour to the PGA Tour, and they are getting embroiled in geopolitical discussions, and they don't know how to extricate themselves from it. And it's
well, how do you?
You don't.
We're talking about a death here and a killing. And I'm not an expert on any of that stuff. So
by the way, I would like to see the PR plan. Like, how do you deal with answering that question? It's
I don't think you really can answer it. I think
it's a mistake.
But we're seeing this in all lines of business. We saw it with Disney in Florida with the bill that was labeled "Don't Say Gay," and how do big corporations? We've seen it with the NBA in dealing with. Issues in the world, the NFL, every place is dealing with this. And when you're starting off new, they really, the plan, like you said, it's a definite who's down.
All right, Andrew, let's go right into the topics. Topic number 1, you broke the story about Drew Brees leaving NBC. Drew Brees responded to your story on Twitter, and I'm going to quote here: "Despite speculation from media about my future this fall, I'm currently undecided. I may work for NBC. I may play football again. I may focus on business and philanthropy. I may train for the pickleball tour, senior golf tour, coach my kids, or all of the above. I'll let you know." What's going on?
Well, first off, I'm voting for all of the above.
I'm voting for pickleball.
I'm voting for all of the above. I want him to play, be a broadcaster, do pickleball, senior golf, and coach his kids. I'm rooting for that one. Here's the one he didn't mention, which I do think is a possibility, is that he could be the number 2 analyst at Fox, with Greg Olson getting that number 1 job as they wait for Tom Brady. I do think that's a possibility. Here's what we know for certain, and this is one of the funny things when you report. I keep reporting that Brees likes doing games over doing studio, and I've been reporting that, thinking that I just found that out, right, because people have told me that. And then Dan Patrick on his show the other day has a clip from basically around Thanksgiving where Drew Brees does exactly that.
So it's the exact same thing. Let's listen to that clip right now.
Well, I mean, it's a different skill set. It's using different muscles. I'd say the biggest challenge, honestly, is first off, broadcasting and in-studio work are completely different anyway. Broadcasting to me is kind of like playing the game, which is a lot of fun. I prepare the same way. I watch film the same way. I mean, I think about how I would be attacking the opposing team or the opposing defense the exact same way as if I was actually going to go out there and play quarterback. And then it's just a matter of being to articulate that to the fans or those listening and watching, and try to put them in your shoes as a player. You go in studio and it's much quicker. You have a lot more to get through in a very short amount of time. You're really trying to give a synopsis of what happened throughout the entire day. And the broadcasting is college football, and the in-studio is NFL football. So you feel like you have to have this knowledge base of kind of the general landscape of both. So that makes it difficult. And then I get to go broadcast an NFL game on Thursday night in New Orleans. So it's a little bit of everything all kind of thrown into a very short amount of time.
Andrew, that sounds like somebody that does not like studio work.
No, he doesn't. From what I understand, it's more talking like a fan instead of, like he said there, when you're in the booth, that's where people have the energy. You feel the crowd, and like he said, it's as close to the game as you can get when you're not in it or coaching, and so that's what he wants to do. Now, the idea of him possibly doing Notre Dame still, to me, 2 things. I don't think that's happening. I think they're already looking for his replacement, number 1. Number 2, Mike Tirico's going to do Sunday Night Football. Is there an outside shot that he could do Notre Dame too? Maybe. Tirico likes to do everything. But it could be someone like Jack Collinsworth, an inexperienced play-by-player. If Drew Brees has any clue, right, and he wants to do NFL games, working with an inexperienced play-by-player on college football would be an utter mistake if he just wants to never have be in the booth again, because that's just you're asking for trouble with that combination. The Fox idea, if Drew Brees wants to do this and I were advising him, I would say take the Fox number 2 spot, keep getting better. You like doing games. It's still a high-profile job. I mean, I get it. It's Drew Brees, and you would think he should be a number 1, and he very well should be when you think of his career. But if he does well, it will show that he wants to do it. And the idea of him being a 1 at some point, he's only 43 years old, and getting this another one of these huge contracts is very plausible. But if he doesn't do it at all, I think maybe Drew Brees doesn't really get another chance, or at least a great chance.
Here's a crazy thing to me about Drew Brees. I thought he did a credible job on Notre Dame. I thought he paired pretty well with Tirico, and that was okay. He had one awful game. It was a really bad game, and that has totally colored the way people are viewing him as an announcer. So if this is something he wants to do, he's shown that he has a lot of potential. He probably isn't he definitely isn't a number 1 person right now. But if he wants to be a broadcaster, and if he wants to take the craft of broadcasting seriously, he absolutely has to go to Fox. Be the number 2 this year, probably the number 3 next year when Brady comes in, and work your way up from that.
Yeah, he wanted that Amazon job to team with Al Michaels. Michaels didn't want him, and so I think that won the day with Amazon. I think there are people at Amazon who do like Brees. I think there's people at Fox who like Brees, who think he could be good.
Michaels didn't want him. Is it because he was too inexperienced? Is it because of the one playoff game? Because right now he has somebody that doesn't do NFL games in Kirk Herbstreit.
Yeah. So, a couple things there. First off, it was before the playoff game when all that went down. It was more that At that point, we're talking about in the fall, mid-season, when this started going on with Aikman, where Aikman came into fruition. That's who Michaels really wanted, was Aikman at that point. I mean, first wanted Collinsworth, then Aikman. So Brees was kind of like, Michaels didn't want to train somebody on the job. That's not what he wanted to do. With Herbstreit, that wasn't, I don't think, a Michaels decision at that point. That was Amazon kind of saying, Al, this is who you're going to have, because they hadn't found. They tried to get McVay for him. He wanted McVay, who was inexperienced. McVay was inexperienced, but he was the Super Bowl winning coach. And Michaels and McVay have a relationship. They live near each other in L.A. I think they're out to dinner. So McVay is in a different category as you're going to train somebody. He just won the Super Bowl. There's a friendship. So Herbstreit, no relationship there. I think Herbstreit's a good match, personally, because you're hiring a broadcaster, not quarterback. Herbstreit never played in the NFL, but so there's some nuance there. But I think Brees did want that job, but didn't work out because Michaels didn't want him.
And for Michaels, the game of musical chairs had ended. Like, he was at Amazon, so
it didn't exactly end, but yeah, didn't exactly end. It was at the 1 yard line, and there were some attempts at ESPN. There were some attempts at Fox. It didn't exactly end, but he. Al has been doing this a long time. He's the best ever. He also knows what he's doing, or at least he's pretty good behind the scenes as well. And so Drew Brees, it's obvious, wants to do games, and I think it's NFL games. That opportunity is not there at NBC. For what I know, that relationship is over. I think you look at the tweet that you mentioned. You read it very well. Drew Brees does need to work on using periods and not just commas. At Purdue, they need to teach more periods and not just commas. My story on a Sunday, maybe he would like to control how things are reported. He's Drew Brees. I don't blame him. That's not my issue, my problem. But I don't see, unless he's doing something he doesn't really want to do, how it works out with NBC, because he doesn't want to do studio, and it's 6 Notre Dame games on college with likely an inexperienced play-by-player. Again, it's not definitely Jack Collinsworth, but if it is, inexperienced play-by-player. And Tirico, I think, soured a little bit on Brees as well.
I do know that Fox does want him, and Fox does believe that they can coach him up to where he can be. That's
Fox,
part of.
So let's look at it. I think if you're Fox, I can see it. I know that the people listening to this who are really into this say, well, he had a bad playoff game. If you're Fox, it's Drew Brees, one of the all-time greatest quarterbacks. If he was coming out now, probably getting between $10 and $20 million to do a game. So he'd be a number one. Instead, now he has some experience of doing games last year. He comes to you as a number 2 on a discount. Now that's where it's going to come down to. Can Drew Brees say, well, Tom Brady got this humongous $375 million contract. Can I do it for a couple of $1 million? We all say they don't need the money, but there's ego involved. But if you want to do this, Drew Brees' NFL career was Chargers kind of got rid of him for Phillip Rivers, went to the Saints and became an all-time great, had a better career than Phil Rivers. He has a chance to do that again if he wants to do this. He doesn't have to do this. He has a lot of money, he has a lot of opportunities, and he might play pickleball.
Pickleball, the new hot sport. It's taken over my neighborhood in D.C., pickleball. All right, well, the tennis players hate it because they take up all the tennis courts. You brought up Tom Brady's $375 million deal. Last week when we did the pod, it was right after this got announced. I almost wish we had waited 24 hours for it.
We could let it kind of soak in, and we didn't really get to totally collect our thoughts. And the one thing that's really come up to me is that within that $375 million deal is what else does it include? What's possible? Fox has come back, at me a little bit with a statement.
A little bit.
Well, maybe. I mean, they have one statement.
Well, let's go right into the statement. The statement from Fox.
Wait, John if you're not watching, John's putting on the glasses to read this.
Because I want to get this right. Because if they're just going to put out a statement and they're not going to say what's wrong, we have to parse the words of the statement, right?
Let's do it. It's like a dramatic reading. Maybe we get some music.
Here we go.
He's going to love having to edit this. Our great technical guy, Christopher Mason, maybe you can put some dramatic music under your...
What kind of music? Like Gone with the Wind style music or something like...
It's very dramatic. Mike and the Mad Dog used to do missives from George Steinbrenner, where they used to do I think some special military music. Go ahead.
A thriller ending here. All right, from Fox, quote, "What has been reported isn't an accurate description of the deal, and we have not released details beyond what was discussed on our quarterly earnings call." So is not an accurate description of the deal. It does not say that your money was wrong.
Does not.
And they're not commenting on the record or on background about whether your money was wrong. It's just saying that you didn't describe the deal correctly. What does that mean, do you think?
Well, again, these are questions for Fox to answer, right? Like I asked before the story. I don't just write these things. I call everybody involved in all these stories. So it's really for them to answer. So now I'm guessing something that's like kind of chasing ghosts. But look, do I think there's more to these deals, right? This is a deal with Fox. So yes, he's in for the games. He's in the booth. They haven't even said if he's in for every game. They said the biggest games, which is kind of an interesting little thing. I'm not saying he isn't in for every. I think he's in for every game when he comes out, but with Aikman, they were just going to do the doubleheader games in the playoffs. I mean, is that possible? I think if Brady wants to be good, he has to be committed and do it every week. I don't think he just show up 8 times a year. Aikman was going to do that after 20 years. So I don't think you can do that, but they didn't say that. They haven't said anything. So, but is there more to the deal? So you talk about where we start. Okay, when you get to the 37. You start at 18. Okay, that's what Romo and Aikman make per year. Right?
Aikman makes $18 and $1, I think. Aikman he makes more than Romo.
Technically, Romo makes $17.5, and then there's $500,000 extra for an assistant and travel. But regardless, all right, but it's 180
all right,
for 10
so
years.
let's say 18. Right, that's
18,
the start.
So you're starting 18. The number to get Tom Brady, who clearly this is not something he necessarily wanted to do. Obviously, he gave Fox indication that he's interested in doing it because that's how you get to this point. But if you look back, he did an interview with Jason Gay of the Wall Street Journal where he said he had no interest in doing this. This was like a year to 6 months ago, where he said he has no interest in going in the booth. So again, that's an interview, but there's no reason in that interview for him to say no interest unless that's how he truly feels. So from what I understand, Brady also didn't want to travel. So now he's traveling again, private jet, the whole thing, but private jet. So the number where I heard this like towards around the Super Bowl, it was $25 million was just being thrown out there just for the games. Okay, so we're at $25 million. Then we have the ambassadorship. Okay,
because that's what he was announced as.
He was ambassador. So we know there's other elements. They haven't described what those other elements. Then this is what gets us to New York here at the upfronts. Okay, and we both went to the Fox upfront. Again, we don't know this. I'm not reporting this. I'm not saying this is part of the deal. But they made a huge deal about Tubi. All right, my newsletter every Monday.
Tubi, of course, is streaming service by Fox.
And it's ad-supported, doesn't cost anything. Obviously, this is becoming a bigger and bigger part of Fox's strategy. The World Cup, all the World Cup games after the final whistle will be available on demand on Tubi. They're pointing people to Tubi. They're investing in Tubi. They feel like they're zigging when everyone's zagging, asking for money for subscription. So, Tubi 12? Okay, how does that sound to you? 2B12. That sounds pretty good to me. I kind of like that. And if you think about, he did Man in the Arena already with ESPN. He's got a Netflix special that's coming out where he's going to be an executive producer and roasting. So is it possible that he's going to do some executive producing, or he's like doing things for children in terms of shows related maybe to sports, and then he's showing up at maybe the World Cup or other places for them. It's not getting to $37.5 million. Again, I'm saying I'm not backing down at all. 10 years, $375. They have a statement out there. I'm more than interested in correcting any record if they're willing to say it. They're kind of saying a vague statement, and you're making me address the whole thing, and so I have on this podcast.
You said you didn't want to address it.
Well, it's not that I don't want to address it. It's just like I don't know what they're saying. They're not really. I don't want to get in a thing with them, but they're not saying what's incorrect.
Well,
really.
Here's the thing about the Fox upfront that we went to, and the part that we really paid no attention to when they brought in a bunch of celebrities that were helming shows and producing shows.
Yep, Kevin Garnett was one.
Fox's strategy from its entertainment programming is they want to identify what they said were big actors, but it's really just kind of big names, and they want to build around that big name. So do you want to executive produce? Tom Brady's already proved through ESPN Plus. You mentioned Netflix. That's what he wants to do. That has to be a pretty big component of that.
$37.5 million. All right, so we're starting to get there.
Well, now we're getting we're getting over 37.5 million.
Exactly. It's like, wait, maybe, is it too low, Fox? That should be the question.
Yeah, Fox is. I mean, they are more aggressive in the sports gambling space than any of the other networks.
Bet, and then they have it's an odd relationship with FanDuel.
You want to have an ambassadorship with Fox Bet, but
FanDuel, they have it's an that's a whole other story we're not going to get into. But there is a ownership stake with FanDuel. Could it be part of that? Drew Brees, we talked about earlier, the incessant points bet commercials. I think he gets around $4 million for that. What's Tom Brady worth? Mm-hmm. If he does that, again, we're not saying that. And you ask yourself, again, speculating here, not reporting this, I want to make that totally clear. But if Tom Brady was going to do some kind of testimonials for gambling, would he want to do that as an active player? Or would he want to know about that part of the deal when he's an inactive player and he's retired? Peyton Manning already does one. Eli Manning, all the Mannings do it. Drew Brees does it. It doesn't seem like it's taboo. So you say Tom Brady's brand. It doesn't seem like it's taboo to do gambling, to be involved in these gambling companies. So again, not saying that's part of it, but you start getting there.
Yeah.
You're $25 million for the games.
I'm at $74 million now.
Exactly,
just about.
We're at 74. So maybe it's low, but they have a vague statement.
So,
they don't, and they're not saying. So we've addressed that.
What was interesting, I thought, also about the Fox's upfront. Well, first of all, they taped everything. Unlike all the other networks that have their executives come out live, it was all on tape, which was a little odd, I thought. But Tom Brady was not in New York. Yep. He was not at the upfront. He did deliver, I think it was a 30-second taped message.
Zoom.
Yeah, just kind of about how excited he was,
Very excited.
Yeah, very excited. Thrilled, I believe he said.
Yeah.
And then he threw it back to Aaron Andrews. Then the Fox executives that were there were like, look, he's going to play football this year, and they have a year to sort of figure out how to get him.
Well, they did. They tried. They wanted to keep it very tight. They didn't tell everybody, and so now they also they didn't. It's not like they're like, this is the overall business plan. They had some ideas. Now they have to execute because they weren't telling all these people because they didn't want it to get out. So now they got to go to all the departments and say, all right, you got Tom Brady, go sell it, go figure it out. And so that's where that stands.
But commenting on Tom Brady and whether or not he's going to be a good analyst is Joe Buck.
Yes.
Former Fox.
Well, let's set it up properly. ESPN and Joe Buck and Troy Aikman had their first. Now they'd made some comments previously, but their first conference call after the.
Can we do a little inside baseball first?
Go ahead.
They had their first conference call that was an hour before Fox had their big upfront. It got noticed by some folks in Los Angeles.
It did, but I always saw this coincidence.
Oh, total coincidence.
Total. ESPN folks, I don't think they were doing that on purpose.
No,
personally.
absolutely
but it was
not.
Good.
Yeah.
It was 3:15 for Buck and Aikman and 4 o'clock for the Fox up front where Buck and Aikman had left. So that did raise some eyebrows.
It was a total coincidence.
Total coincidence.
Total.
So, that's where
By the way, that's me saying I don't think it was a total coincidence. I think you think it was a total coincidence.
I think it's a coincidence.
All right.
You think so?
Oh, good. Yeah, corporate. Why not?
I don't feel like ESPN rolls like that.
Corporate intrigue.
All you need is one person, not Disney as a company. All you need is one person.
Like they're like fake evil. That's like incredibly evil.
That's not evil. You're just saying we're just putting our guys.
Like
out.
not evil. You're right. That's not the right word. Strike that word. Not evil, but it's more. I don't know. It just I don't know. It just doesn't strike me. Maybe I'm naive. Maybe I'm.
By the
naive.
way, I don't know anything.
Yeah, exactly.
So, maybe I'll take them at their word.
All right.
Yeah.
Fine. All right. Well, Joe Buck addressed Tom Brady and what if he thinks he can be good and what the pitfalls could be for Brady. Buck was very positive about him, but there are some things that he's going to have to learn.
And as far as Brady, I mean, would anybody ever bet against the guy being great at anything? He's kind of cornered the market in that. But it's a new thing. And with new opportunities come new responsibilities. And, I think it'll be a steep learning curve, and I'm sure he'll be fantastic.
Yeah, so it's going to be a transition for Tom Brady into getting into the booth. And the one thing you wonder about when we go through this whole thing, if Joe Buck knew that Tom Brady might have been in the on-deck circle, because part of the reason that Joe Buck wanted to go.
This is a fascinating
Yes.
story. And we don't know the answer to this.
Yeah. Joe Buck, I think Joe Buck knew that they were going to go after, or at least make an attempt for Tom Brady when he was leaving. And we all mentioned it in stories that Brady, but just he said he didn't want to do it. And then obviously when he went back to playing, he went off the radar, at least for me, in terms of as a possibility. And he's still not going to be the analyst for who knows when. But if Joe Buck knows that, does he stay? Because it's Brady, and that's the future. That's a younger Booth. Now, and Fox, I think, comes out looking good in this. We both like Kevin Burkhardt. He's an excellent play-by-play guy and a good guy, so I think that works in this day and age. I think Greg Olson could be very good. I do think Greg Olson, you have to take that job because I think he's in a great position. I think Tom Brady might be the best thing to happen to him. He just has to do well. And he would have had to do well regardless, because if he got in the job, there always would have been the specter of a Tom Brady or an Aaron Rodgers or a Sean McVay or a Mike Tomlin who could come and take his job if he was only okay. So he has to do great regardless. And I'd want to bet on myself. Chris Collinsworth at NBC is going to go through the next Super Bowl. He could get another contract, maybe even 2, but he's going to be 67 through the next Super Bowl. Do they move on? If Olsen is really good, he would probably be able to command $10 million at that point, maybe 12, but he's not commanding any $375 million contracts, you wouldn't think, at that point.
Last week, we set up a GoFundMe for Chris Collinsworth, who only makes $12.5 million. Did we get any money in that?
No. Well, here's the other thing I should mention, though, is Pro Football Focus is owned by Collinsworth. He's doing very well, so we don't really, I think he's going to be fine. He can go out to dinner, probably even fly private if he wanted. So you look at Tony Romo, and you have Brady, 37.5. You have Kirk Herbstreit. When you add his 2 salaries between Amazon and ESPN, we don't know the exact numbers, but I think he might be in 20s, because he's getting around 9-ish at ESPN, and I think in, 8 figures when you get past 10? So I think he's...
9 for the number 1 college football analyst is a bargain basement.
I don't think so. This stuff has gotten... you see where this has grown. Tony Romo, when he came out of retirement from the Cowboys to CBS, had a 3-year, around $10 million contract. He went from $10 million to $180 million. Okay, from $3 to $4 million a year to 18. These salaries have gone crazy, and so I don't know. $9 million seems about right.
Yeah, So the question I get most from friends is, why now? Why is everything happening now? And I always have 2 answers. I want to hear your top 2 reasons.
Okay.
My top reason is the Boogermobile.
Let me just interrupt you for 1 second. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I feel bad for Boog McFarlane.
I do too.
You know what? We called the Boogermobile. It's not his fault that he was put in the Boogermobile. It just sounds so good. You can't not say the Boogermobile. And he kind of gets a raw deal because it's like the Boogermobile. Like it was Booger McFarlane's fault. He didn't.
It has to be like in the National Broadcasting Hall of Fame. I actually
tried to do a story on what happened to the Boogermobile. I wrote it actually, but is it someplace now? It was sold for parts.
So the problem with the Boogermobile though is that ESPN's Monday night telecast was not just not liked; it was lampooned. Yeah. And so ESPN had to do something drastic to come back from that, and that begat when they went after Tony Romo hard, and so they just felt like they needed to make a big statement because they didn't just have the worst telecast; they had one that was made fun of.
And that was on the brink of the negotiations for the new NFL contracts, which is basically what this is all about. Now, I've had people tell me, and people who put together the schedule said this last week, that the announcers don't matter in terms of what schedule they get. And whatever. The league makes it clear to the networks they make it clear to the networks that it does matter. So ESPN can get their booth right. CBS didn't lock up Romo early enough, and they waited. And so he got to the brink of free agency. ESPN was there with a $14 million.
So what's your number 1 reason?
ESPN, like what you said it.
So you think
if the Monday night booth could not get, if the Monday night could have just go hire Ian Eagle, find an analyst that he would have made great, and this would not have all happened. Mm-hmm. Would not have happened. Mm-hmm. None of it. but they didn't do that. And so instead, Aikman, hopefully we'll get Aikman on at some point, but Aikman, I think, saw the Romo money and was like, why am I not making the Romo money? Fox, at least at that point, didn't feel like they wanted to give Aikman that money. Now they've given Brady more, but I still think you'd rather have Tom Brady in a lot of regards than Troy Aikman at this point in their careers and lives going forward. You'd make that bet if Brady actually does do it for an extended period of time. And so though that's the biggest reason, and that just made this domino go. And then the Aikman said this the other day, it did look very close, like it was going to be Aikman staying at Fox, doing the late window doubleheader games, America's Game of the Week, they call it, Fox, and then doing the playoffs and the Super Bowl, and then doing Amazon on Thursdays, and that fell through very late. And then ESPN and Jimmy Pitaro swooped in, got Aikman, then found out they could also get Joe Buck, because Al Michaels might have been the guy. He might have not gone to Amazon, and he would have gone to ESPN with Aikman instead. Buck goes, which is to me the bigger thing for ESPN, because with all due respect to the people they had in there, they just didn't get the play-by-play guy 100% right, and they got Joe Buck, and to me that's bigger, long-term, who's going to be there for 15, 20 years. I think it's a better chance it's Joe Buck than Troy Aikman.
So if I have a number two reason, the number two reason is Amazon getting an exclusive full schedule.
100%.
And I think that ESPN would have been willing to grow a booth into a Super Bowl booth. But when they saw Fred Gaudelli and they saw the names of Troy Aikman going there and Al Michaels going there, like ESPN's been doing this since the late 80s. Yep. They're not going to have somebody come right in and immediately have a better booth.
Nail it. Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I think that also created a sense at ESPN where it's like, yeah, we have to pay for this.
Okay. So John, we talk about the money and Brady and how we get to 375. Amazon was going to offer Sean McVay $20 million plus a year. Okay? 100%. He was the Super Bowl winning coach. They were going to give him that money. Michaels wanted him. That would have been humongous. You get the greatest NFL TV play-by-player of all time in Al Michaels, and you would have had the Super Bowl winning coach who's in his 30s in Sean McVay.
Who's great on TV.
Yeah, who potentially could be really good. They're going $20 million plus. So what is Tom Brady getting? I mean, I don't know. Look, until Fox says something, we're back on that. Until Fox tells us exactly what it is, you tell me I'm wrong. I know who my sources are on it, but irregardless, that's how you get to these numbers, though. Sean McVay is going to get 20 plus. You have to start in terms of Tom Brady getting 25 just for the games, then we're doing the other stuff. At least 25, okay, just for the games. All right, and it could be more. I don't know the exact breakup of how the money is. And also Brady, another thing just for you to put this into it, he was negotiating with ESPN as well. That would have been a lesser deal because they already have 15 people doing the games and paying a lot of money already. So they didn't really, even though it's Tom Brady, they didn't have room for him on the game broadcast. But he was negotiating with them. He didn't necessarily want to travel. When you look at it, he was going to do it because he couldn't say no. And that's how you get to those digits. And it's a complicated deal, I'm sure, when you see the fine print.
That money is crazy. We've said this before, but in the context of the NFL, in the context of what everybody is paying for their rights, ESPN's paying $2.5 billion per year for the rights. So $33 million for Buck and Aikman compared to $2.5 billion, that it's still a lot of money, but it's like a marketing expense. And Fox is paying, $2.3 billion for its rights.
Look, you sound like an agent, so you're ready to get your 10%, 5%.
Well, these are experienced business executives. They're not going to do money-losing deals.
Well, here's the thing, the topic is, why are salaries so high? You're not getting Peyton Manning. You're not getting Tom Brady for this money. Mm-hmm. Tony Romo had an offer. So ESPN was willing to go $14 million. And so that gets to it. So this is where it starts. So that's where the market changed because ESPN wanted Tony Romo on their team when he's the hottest analyst since John Madden going into negotiations. And that was done. That deal was done right before the pandemic. And the idea then was, I'd reported that they wanted to get Super Bowls. And there were thoughts that they might try and get CBS's Sunday package. and keep Monday night. Like Disney was with Iger in charge at that point, that they were going to go crazy, and they wanted Romo. They wanted to make the first salvo. We got Tony Romo, and that was the thinking then, and that's where you get to. So then you get to 18, and then now you get to Tom Brady's involved in an overall deal. You get $37.5 million.
The last thing, because we're going way too long here, the reason that we're here in New York, the upfronts and sports being such a big part of it, it's the last thing holding the cable bundle together, and it's the most important programming to all of these networks. And with the NFL being as big and powerful as it is, yeah, they're going to pay whatever it takes to get these people to have the best shot with the NFL, first to get the rights and then to get the schedule.
Yeah, and also when you're at these upfronts, you do see these stars, right, come out, right, for some of these. And when Michael Strahan, now, Hall of Famer, Good Morning America, when he comes out, that makes an impact. Michael Strahan, we knew him from New York as a Giant, and that, now where he's come, that's like, he's a huge star. Mm-hmm. Tom Brady comes out next year, whenever he does it. I mean, yes, he's on a Zoom this time, but when he really comes, that's worth a lot of money.
Fox will have to get a big space for that.
Exactly, and then like the things that you can do with Tom. You want to be in business with Tom Brady. So to get to it, also, you want to be, for ESPN, from what I understand, Peyton Manning's probably their most important relationship in terms of everyone they have, from Stephen A. to Van Pelt. Peyton Manning's probably number one. I mean, those guys, all those other top people are in that category, but Peyton Manning's probably the number one person that they're in business with, especially with the streaming stuff and what he did to change the image of Monday Night Football last year. Let's finish up last topic, and then we're gonna go to Gary Bettman for our big get. Looking forward to that. Apple and the MLS. Here, let's do one of these. I would be surprised, right? One of these, I would be shocked if Apple is not involved in the MLS. I think MLS and Apple, that they're going to do at least a streaming deal. I think ESPN could be the linear place for their games. Maybe not do 35 games like they do now. Maybe do 25, more ABC and ESPN. I think that's a possibility. That's in play. This deal, we thought, the commissioner of the MLS, Don Garber, said it was going to be done a little bit earlier. It hasn't completed yet. What do you think about all that? I know you've done a lot of reporting and kind of what is your I wouldn't be surprised if saying?
I wouldn't be surprised if Apple sort of runs the table on the next couple of rights that come up, including the NFL. We've talked about this before, the Sunday ticket rights.
I got one on that. Finish your thought, and I got one on that.
Including the MLS rights that are currently being negotiated right now. If you look at what Apple TV is doing, they did the baseball deal. They're not just stopping with the baseball deal. It's kind of a test. They want to see if this works. And MLS is relatively. It's not the NBA. It's a low-cost test to see if they can do live video, if they can do things differently, and if they can get sort of an Apple way of doing things. And it wouldn't surprise me at all because it fits within how Tim Cook approaches. Trip Mickle, a former colleague, just wrote a great book.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about it. I should read that. And I'm going on vacation in June. I'm going to get that book.
He should give you one. He's a loyal listener to this pod.
He doesn't have to give you one. I'll buy him. Got to help his book sell so he can get another book deal.
The whole point of his book, after Steve Jobs dies and Tim Cook takes over, and the early Apple would only release an iPhone or an iPod when it was fully formed and ready to go and there was no problems with it. Apple under Tim Cook, they're happy to release different things that have bugs or that don't work very well because they're going to improve. They're going to improve on it. And so if you look at where baseball is right now, it's not where baseball is going to be in 3 years.
Yeah, they got some improvement. They put some bugs in there. There's some bugs in
there. There are some bugs in the baseball one. So Apple is serious about sports. They're serious about testing it right now. We'll see what they learn from it, and if they're gonna be really serious, boy, the NBA deal coming up is the one to really look at.
Yes, I do think there's concern there. I will say this, and I throw this little nugget out there. I'm not positive about them in Sunday Ticket. Hearing some rumbling. My hands are like up on this is like my original thought. I'm gonna go back to that. Like when they have a deal, they have a deal. Who's leading, who's not. But I've heard some rumblings that maybe Apple doesn't get Sunday Ticket, and I do think my wild card. I'm not saying now. I'm just this is total speculation. I do not know this. I said Warner, Discovery Warner as well. I'm not saying that. I'm speculating, but I did hear a little rumbling that maybe not Apple. So we will see with that. Amazon, ESPN, and Disney also have been mentioned with them. But I was on Apple too, but I've heard some rumblings.
My storyboard going forward is all about the RSNs.
Yep.
And it's all about Warner Brothers Discovery, because David Zaslav is now overseeing it. He's used sports in every other market as a way to grow. He comes up through the Dick Ebersol sort of a tree of people. He sees a huge value in sports, and he's now over a big company. I can't write about them enough.
John, let's bring in the commissioner of the NHL, Gary Bettman. Commissioner, you've been in charge of the NHL for around 3 decades, and now the Marchand and Ourand Sports Media Podcast. Thanks for being on.
It took you 3 decades to want to interview me?
We've been waiting. We've been planning this. We had to get the right moment. We feel like it's now. So we're going to focus on media, of course, here on this podcast. And you just did, of course, a huge deal, moving from NBC to ESPN and Turner and ABC as well, along with that ESPN deal. Just you're 1 year in. What do you make of what's gone on in terms of this transition?
The transition has been better than seamless, and it has been sensational in terms of the results. Both ESPN, the Walt Disney Company, ABC, ESPN, ESPN Plus, Hulu, and Turner, which is now Warner Brothers Discovery, made a series of promises as we were going through our discussions about promotion, production, scheduling, and they have both been utterly fantastic. And the results are, in the first round of this year's playoffs, we're seeing numbers on cable that we've never seen before. In fact, I think Game 7 of the New York Rangers Pittsburgh Penguins was the most viewed first round game on cable, and 3 of the 4 most highly rated games on cable that we've ever seen. And so they're doing a great job, and we couldn't be more pleased.
Now, I know you study this space, very closely when you're doing these deals, and you guys had a great relationship with NBC. But when you talk about those numbers and where they've gone this year, and breaking higher than forever in some of these numbers, and higher than a long time for others, what is it about ESPN and Turner? Like, why do you think that is? Just better distribution? What's your take on terms of the reasoning?
I think part of it's scheduling. I think a large part of it's promotion. I was quoted as saying, with my tongue in my cheek, when we first made these deals, that if ESPN did half a good a job as promoting us as they did in freezing us out during the 17 years we weren't with them, we would be in great shape. And they're doing a great job in promoting us, as is Turner. I think we've gotten more mainstream in terms of sports. Turner with ESPN, Turner, I think, tends to skew a little more entertainment oriented, whether it's us or the NBA. Our demos, particularly among women on Turner, are multi-double digits in terms of the increase. I think for us, and NBC did a good job. I have no complaints. But I think the change in moving to these 2 platforms has given us a broader reach and given us a new energy and excitement in terms of our media relationships in the United States, and it's paying dividends.
Gary, the NBC deal was heavily predicated, of course, on linear television, broadcasting, cable television. The regular season this year, you had a lot of games that were streaming on Hulu, on ESPN Plus. Did you like the? Are there any tweaks that you would make to that going forward?
Actually, I think as we look back, as we were modeling how to do this, we sort of hit the sweet spot. First of all, Hulu is in the mix for the exclusive games that are on ESPN Plus, because we wanted to make sure we had broad distribution, and the combination of Hulu and ESPN Plus takes us, 60 or 70 million homes. So there was no issue about games not being able to be widely viewed. The thing that doesn't get a lot of attention was our view that this deal, particularly with ESPN, was really very fan friendly for the following reason. If you were a subscriber last year and prior years to NHL.tv, the 1,000-game out-of-market package, you were paying somewhere around $180 for the whole package. Now, if you're a subscriber to ESPN Plus, which is less than half of what we were charging with .tv, you get all the out-of-market games. You get what was NHL.tv, and you get, to the extent that there are exclusive games on ESPN Plus, you get those as well, and you get all of ESPN Plus's other content. So we made it very predictable. And listen, everybody knows there's a movement towards more and more streaming. We wanted to do it in a way that was evolutionary, was easy to follow, so you know where the games are, and was consumer friendly in terms of pricing and the amount of content that you were getting. And I think we hit all of those marks with the arrangements that we made.
Gary, one of the biggest topics that we talk about every week on this podcast is regional sports networks. What's your opinion of them right now?
I think they're incredibly valuable and important, not just to our clubs from a financial standpoint. That's not what I was referring to, but they tend to really focus most heavily on local content. So depending on who you're a fan of and where you live, you're getting more than the national broadcasters and media partners can give you. And I think that's important. Their model has become increasingly challenged because of the carriage agreements, whether it's on satellite or traditional cable. And, if you're in a place like New York where Comcast isn't carrying MSG network, or you're in Denver where they haven't been carrying altitude on Comcast, the reach gets reduced, the economics change, which is why going direct to consumer over time is making more and more sense. And the regionals are doing that, and we have, with most regionals, have had agreements in terms of encouraging and letting them stream in the local market as well, because much as we're doing on the national level, I think you're going to see more and more of that evolution on the local level as well.
You were the first league to get in with Sinclair to give them the okay to take the rights streaming locally. Why did you do that?
Well, we were also the first league, and it takes us north of the 49th parallel. When I made the last deal with Rogers for Sportsnet, that deal at its time didn't get the credit it deserved in terms of what we and Rogers were trying to accomplish. What we said to them at the time, this is now 8-9 years ago, whatever content you're buying exclusively, you can use on any platform that you have. So there was always a contemplation that, in addition to over the air on the CBC or on Sportsnet on cable and satellite, that they could also stream as well for the content that they were buying. So we saw this coming almost a decade ago. And so when Sinclair came in and said the model was challenged and they're looking to evolve, they found somebody who was somewhat flexible. I mean, obviously, there were issues we had to do to our mutual satisfaction, and we worked very hard together to get to a place that we were both comfortable with.
Gary, when you look at the future of the gambling space, what do you foresee?
Well, what gambling represents, and it's no secret that I've had to be a contortionist on the subject because I was opposed to it for a variety of reasons, which we're now satisfying. But at the end of the day, this is another connection point for fans, and maybe for people who aren't fans who will become fans. And I think you're going to see, whether it's gambling or whether it's technology, for us, it's NHL Edge, which is the puck and player tracking, or it's the digitally enhanced dashboards you're going to see next year. Sports betting is just another connection point, which will use more and more data and more technology. And from our standpoint, we've always believed that you make the game as great as you can, and you use technology to supplement how people are connecting to it, whether it's data or whether or not it's creating their own viewing experience by camera angles and the like and isolation that's available. So this is just another way for us to make sure we're giving fans what they want, when they want, and how they want it.
And how would you describe how your concerns were satisfied in terms of where we've gone this evolution?
Well, among other things, we're being appropriately compensated by the sports betting entities who aren't just taking our content, which was always a concern. And by the way, more than that, we're making sure that the messaging in terms of responsible betting and making sure I don't worry about the integrity of our players. I mean, we do all the things to monitor that you need to, but our players are the consummate professionals. And all of this starts, and maybe I should have started there as well in the questioning, with what's taking place on the ice or on the court or on the field. And we're coming off an incredible first round. And yes, while Turner and ESPN have been phenomenal, when you look at what our first round has been, and we'll put our first round up against any tournament in any sport, but the playoffs, we've had 51 games in the first round. We had 7 of the 8 series go at least 6 games, 5 that went to a game 7. 37% of our games had a team win that was losing at some point during the game. So there's come from behind. The skill, the speed of our game has been absolutely breathtaking. And that's why we believe we have the best competitive balance in all of professional sports. And I think you're seeing that not just in the regular season, but throughout the playoffs.
Gary, take this forward 5 years. How am I going to be watching an NHL game? What's your vision for that? Both within in terms of technology, in terms of gambling, in terms of all that stuff.
You're going to be having strong media partners will continue to be important because their platforms and their promotion are unrivaled. And that's why, again, we're grateful to be with ESPN and all the Walt Disney Company assets, and now Warner Brothers Discovery. I mean, to me, got to get the flow off my tongue a little bit better because I'm used to it, but it's going to be big platforms, big events, and to the extent you want to customize your experience, you're going to have more and more opportunities to do that. And I think particularly with digitally enhanced dashboards, we're going to be able to customize from our business partner standpoint how they're reaching our fans.
Gary, you've been the commissioner for nearly 3 decades, around 3 decades. If you could have one do-over in terms of media, what would it be?
One do-over. I don't know. You know, we've had to evolve. We came from when I took over, we came from a different place because this was a sport prior to my getting here that didn't have a very robust national platform, and having to make a series of deals to secure, putting the money aside, the right scheduling, the right promotion. It's been a journey, and I don't think you can point to any one thing that we did spectacularly right or spectacularly wrong. I think incrementally, we've gotten more and more exposure, and our game has gotten more and more vibrant. You know, during my tenure, HD TV became a thing, right? And when I go back and I look at our games in analog, it's kind of like, okay, we had lots of fans watching, but it wasn't as good an experience as it is now. The fact that no matter where you are, you know, in my early days, if I went out to dinner during the playoffs, I'd have to find a restaurant that had us on TV. Now I can take my iPhone or an iPad and, you know, much to the chagrin of the people I'm dining with in terms of conversation.
I was going to say.
No, they're all fans, but I can have games going on anywhere I am. And so our accessibility and the quality of production because of HDTV and other technological advances, whether it's Skycam or ISOs or what have you, it's gotten better and better and better and more. The experience is more vibrant and it tells our story more. I don't think there's anything in person as good as one of our games. And the place where we suffer had been historically taking the quality of that experience and having it translate as well on television as other sports, because we think their experience isn't as good as ours. Not that it's bad. It was easier to translate to television. For us, the experience is so robust, so emotional, so compelling. Bringing that home had been more and more of a challenge. And I think it's better. It's really good now, but better than it's ever been.
I think that could be a commercial. You have the commissioner's wife, and he's got his phone or iPad, and she's trying to talk to him, and he's just glued on the hockey game. I think that could be an NHL commercial.
Although I will note, he did not say iPad or iPhone. He did not identify an Apple product.
I did say, well, Apple is a great collaborator of ours, and we have a spectacular relationship with them. And yes, I'm more than happy to give Apple or SAP or Verizon or Amazon Web Services, our technology partners, any kind of shameless plug. But by the way, the list of partners that and collaborators I've just given you tells us how connected we are in terms of the technology space to make sure we're maximizing that experience for our fans. And we've got great technology partners.
Gary, I've interviewed you a bunch of times.
That's my iPhone.
There it is, right there.
There you go.
I've interviewed you a bunch of times over the years, and I always ask about the end of your run. You're the senior statesman among sports commissioners, and you always artfully dodge the questions. I'm not going to do it again, but I'm going to do it differently. Like, what criteria are you looking for that will help you decide when you've 30 years is a long run?
The elder statesman, I guess, is better than calling me the old guy. But it's never just one thing. In sports, all of us, whether we're in the midst of it or covering it, it's always about the win or the result in the length of the game. One, I need the ongoing support of ownership, which I've had continuously for 3 decades, and I'm grateful for, and all the things that we've been able to accomplish to grow the game doesn't happen without that support. 2, obviously, you want to be, as you get older, you get a little mindful of it. You want to be in good health, and I think I'm in good health. I feel great, and you got to have the energy and the desire and the passion. None of which, and I hope you get that sense of energy and emotion and passion from this discussion we're having, none of that has diminished. If I wake up in the morning and I'm not excited about what I've got to do and what lays ahead for me for that day, then I shouldn't be doing this anymore. And so if you look at my schedule, for example, the first week of the playoffs, this goes to the energy point. The first night I was in Carolina. The second morning, I was in Montreal for Guy Lafour's funeral. That night, I was in Calgary. The following night, I was in Edmonton. The following night, I was in South Florida. The following night, I was in Tampa. Even when I was in my 20s, that would be a pretty good trick. When we get off this call, I'm going to get on a plane and go see Game 1 of the second round in Colorado. And when the game's over, I'm going to get back on a plane and fly back and probably get home about 4:30 in the morning. And I have meetings all day tomorrow in the office. So when I can't do that anymore, because I don't feel physically or mentally up to it, if it doesn't excite me to be at games. And by the way, why am I doing all this and cramming it in? After the last couple of years, to be back in our buildings full is simply somewhere between breathtaking and sensational. It's fun to see. And our game and our players draw, we talk about the in-game experience, they draw so much energy from what goes on in our buildings and our fans. We really miss that. I mean, yeah, we got through the last 2 years and we did what we had to do to manage it. But to be back where we are, to have a great first round like we did, and every game sold out and loud and energized and fans passionate, that to me is what it's all about. So a long-winded answer is it's about the game, and it's about how I feel about the game and my connection to it that'll determine how long I do it. Obviously, I can't do it forever, right? But I'm enjoying the run.
It sounds like to me, John, another 30 years. We're going to be here in 2052 asking this question again.
That would require me to live to 100.
That's all right. I was aware. I was aware of your age. I have confidence. You're in good shape. You look like you're eating well.
Well, my eating habits are terrible, but it's not because nobody loves sweets like me. But at the end of the day, I understand, particularly in a public-facing job, there's a certain reality to how well you do it and how accessible you can be. And if any of that starts to diminish, then I'll know it's time. But I don't have any sense of that on the horizon. I'm excited to be doing what I do.
All right, well, last one for me then. You threw it out there. You said nobody loves sweets as much as you. What's your one dessert you could have? What is it?
Oh, some form of chocolate layer cake.
Okay.
But don't limit it to that, because I like ice cream and I love and I eat far too much candy. You know what? I'm a bit of a sugar junkie, and that's not a good thing, and I understand that. But as I tell my kids all the time, it probably wouldn't be good for me at this point to be changing what my body's used to.
Yeah, God bless you. That's great. That's great. You can eat all that sugar. Yeah, you look good. Sport is in good shape. John, anything else you have to?
My last question for you, Commissioner, is what can you do to help my Capitals get past the first round?
Your Capitals are just fine. I was talking to Ted Leone just yesterday. They had a really good season. You got to think of it in terms of the team has been consistently competitive. Alex Ovechkin is an absolute marvel, and he's got great help from his teammates. But when you see how competitive the game is, it's hard to ultimately win the prize, which they did fairly recently. And so they'll continue to be good because the team is well owned and well managed.
I like the sounds of that, Andrew. I'll take it.
Yeah, exactly. You can arrange some things for John too if you wanted to, but I don't know. That might not be good.
Let's not do it on this call.
Integrity of the game is the most important thing.
Yes.
Fans have to have confidence. Listen, there are enough times that people get upset with officiating calls or non-calls, but they have to know that it comes from the right place and that there's integrity in everything we do. That's incumbent upon every major professional sport.
Yeah, I'll be clear. I was joking there. That was me joking.
Well, Commissioner, congratulations on a fantastic round one. Good luck for the rest of the playoffs. And thank you very much for joining us on the Mando podcast, Marchand and Ourand Sports Media Podcast.
Thank you for having me, guys, and enjoy this playoff run. It should be spectacular.
Talk about a big get. That's great having the NHL commissioner with us. My one big takeaway is from his last answer. He's not leaving anytime soon. He's going to be the commissioner. When we're doing this pod in 30 years, we're going to have him on. It's going to be great.
We're not going to change the logo, though. We're not going to have gray hair in the logo.
Oh, no. I'm definitely going to be young in that logo.
We're doing this in 30 years. God bless us. That means it was successful. Mine was, he didn't take shots at the other leagues, but I did find it interesting, and it's correct, that he said that his league is easy to find. I know people who have ESPN Plus who are hockey fans who absolutely love the ESPN Plus product because they want the out-of-market games, and the point he made about that's a great point, and that's fan-friendly. You look at what's going on with baseball with the Apple deal. Now you got the Peacock deal. In New York with the Yankees, they have 21 games on Amazon on Fridays. A lot of spread out. Where are the games? There's games on Turner. There's games on ESPN. You got your regional sports network. Soccer, we know, is on 50 million different platforms. You need a second mortgage to afford all that. And so I think he made good points, and that is really a benefit of his deal, especially as we go forward, because I do think fans are going to be kind of cognizant of who's kind of ripping them off. And he's under one entity. Soccer is under all different entities, so it's really not anybody's fault. But they did, I think, pretty right by their fans in terms of their new deals. Let's move to our calls of the week. Our calls of the week are on the NHL. So call of the week, let's hear it.
Call of the week.
All right, we have two of them. A national and local from the New York market, the Rangers, with a super exciting Game 7 overtime goal. Let's start with TBS and Kenny Albert.
Aaron, right wing circle, shoots, he scores! Rangers.
Now let's move right into Sam Rosen's call, local call. So Kenny Albert, national call. Sam Rosen, local call on MSG Network.
Now Panarin moves in. He shoots. He scores! He scores! Rangers! Rangers! Rangers win!
This is going to be tough because we have to rate those two. And they both did what all good announcers do, in my opinion, which is they step back, especially on television. They let the video tell the story, and they stay quiet. Do you know how hard it is to stay quiet for 30 seconds? Sam Rosen, I counted, he stayed quiet for 26 seconds.
Kenny Albert was quiet for, they were almost, the whole team, nearly 3 minutes. 2 minutes, 56 seconds, with the Ranger crowd at the Garden going nuts. And there's a difference in the call, right? The Rosen call, more of, I don't want to say a fan call, but local
It was
call.
a homer call.
Yeah, more, exactly. Rangers win. Kenny Albert, who happens to be the radio play-by-play guy of the Rangers, but is the number one TV analyst and will do the Stanley Cup for Turner. He played it more straight. And also, there's a difference between who won. You know, for the national call. The Rangers win. You have the crowd at MSG. They're going nuts. What an atmosphere. Step back. Unselfish. Doesn't try to make it about himself. Kenny Albert makes it about the moment. Let the pictures and the sounds tell the story. If the Penguins win, then I think you have to put more into the call because you're going to have silence, basically, because the home team had lost. And then you need to embellish the situation a little bit more, add the words to complement the situation. So, very interesting. Both calls are very good. All right, who do you got?
All right, both calls are good. Both calls are very good. I'm going with Kenny Albert. I want to highlight people that stay quiet. He was able to do it for 2 minutes. I can't stay quiet for 2 minutes. I thought Sam Rosen had a very good call. I'm going to give that one to Kenny.
Yeah, look, I applaud Kenny Albert because I think it was an unselfish call and the right move. But I like the Rosen call. Again, it's not really fair. It's like apples and oranges we're comparing here because the Rosen call is that emotional call, which I like. Which is just a little bit more fun. So I'm gonna give him the edge on this. But Kenny Albert did a tremendous job as well. So he kind of not really picking one. I am picking one, but it's more because I just like that. It's more that I like that local angle on.
I do love. Is there any other way to say that other than he shoots, he scores? It's almost the only way to do it.
I know.
Right?
You know what we need to do? We should bring in Doc Emmerich. He'd never do it, but we should have him rate the calls. He would never do it. He's too good a guy. But we're not. And he also
he'd give everybody A+.
Yeah, he's considered the best ever. Yeah. Then we should bring Marv Albert to do the basketball calls.
Marv is more likely to do that, I think.
All right, let's get the post in the Sports Business Journal. We're gonna have to get our budget a little bit higher though for this. We're gonna get Marv and Doc involved in the podcast. Well, that's gonna do it for this week. Long one, but a fun one. Gary Bettman was tremendous. A lot of talk about the NFL. I think we'll probably talk about the NFL again next week. It never ends.
Yeah, it never ends. I thought we were done with it.
No, never ends. It's a business.
It's turned into quite a business for Andrew. Marchand.
Listen to Aikman. We've created a business here.
Yeah, exactly. The Andrew Marchand business. I love it. That's perfect.
You can help our business here. If you're listening this far, we appreciate any reviews that are positive, and 5 stars is very helpful. Thanks for listening again.
Yeah, thanks for making it all the way to the end. Bye.